Welcome everyone to Excel Power Hour, tips and tricks for Excel power users. Today is May 3rd, 2017, and this is the May monthly webinar. It's 2 p.m. Eastern. I believe it should be about 11 a.m. On Pacific time. Today's topics are time-saving shortcuts and text functions. We're going to spend about 5 minutes kind of introducing the webinar series, and then we're going to go straight into our guest speaker, Norman Axelman. I'm actually not doing any demonstrations today. Norman will be doing the entire thing, so I appreciate that very much. I really needed the break. But Norman is an expert in the subject matter, and I think you're really gonna enjoy his presentation, and then we'll leave it open for Q&A. This presentation will take approximately 50 minutes. Now, what is Excel Power Hour? We are a monthly webinar series focused on Excel power users, tips and tricks. A lot of the people that join us are accountants, but we do have some other professionals and business owners that join us. The website is excelpowerhour.com. Go ahead and check it out. I'm still it's still under construction, but we're going to start posting some of articles and some how-tos on that website as well. And then search Excel Power Hour in Facebook to continue the conversation, ask questions, join the group so we can discuss it even further. Now, the webinar itself is the first Wednesday of every month. It will be 30 minutes to an hour. You register once, access all of them. We may have some special episodes that are sponsored by third-party apps, Excel app type of applications or collaborated content, but we don't have any yet, not the case for today. And this is not a CPE providing webinar. So this is only for your personal continuing education, not for the professional continuing education of accountants. Although I do get some requests for it, we're not just equipped for that yet. And the stuff that we talk about is basically anything that has to do with Excel, spreadsheets, Excel add-ons, any applications that interact with Excel will be open for discussion in this webinar. Now, about myself, the host, my name is Hector Garcia. I'm a CPA and a certified information technology professional. I'm a huge fan of Excel and do a lot of work in Excel for my accounting and QuickBooks type of work. I have an accounting and a QuickBooks consulting firm here in Miami, so I do a lot of both QuickBooks and Excel work. I'm an advanced QuickBooks Pro advisor and a QuickBooks reseller, and there's my email address if you ever want to contact me for any tax, accounting, QuickBooks, or even Excel type questions. Now, our guest speaker is Norman Axelman. He's a regular instructor for the annual accountants conference called Scaling New Heights. He taught that last year, teaching again this year. Great conference to go to. He's teaching, I think, pretty much the entire conference as he's doing basically Excel A through Z there. He's also an adjunct professor in Miami-Dade College, where I live. So we actually know each other from locally down here. And he also teaches community association managers Excel, which is a group of people that really need Excel to learn Excel for different reasons. He's got more than 15 years of experience teaching both Excel and other Microsoft Office applications. His email is acs@computeracs.com, and his phone number, it's up there, published on the slide. And he's really, really good at answering calls and emails. If you have an Excel project, you may want him to take a look at it or review it and to see if there's something that maybe he can help you put together or automate certain functions. He's really, really good at that. Of course, he's not a technical support department, so don't be calling in with like free tech support. But he's actually really, really good at giving immediate answers or letting you know whether or not he can help you with the project. Now, Norman, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can introduce yourself. And if I forgot to mention something important, go ahead and mention it.
Great, thank you very much, Hector, and welcome to everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are on the West Coast, and good afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. And I'm delighted to have this opportunity to present to you today. I'm going to now show you just a quick demonstration of some very exciting things that I like to do with Excel, just to kind of get us warmed up and whet our appetite a little bit. And then I'm going to spend some time with some very basic navigation tools and some very, very cool shortcuts Then we're going to do a short section on some text formulas and a little bit more complicated formula, which is extremely valuable, called mid and find, to extract text from a cell. And time permitting, I'd like to show an example of a very cool pivot table application.
Norman,
So I'm going.
real quick, make sure you can share your screen. I'm not sure if you're showing or you're supposed to be showing a slide. Okay, so now we can see your screen perfectly.
Okay, so if everyone's ready, I can now begin.
Go ahead.
And everyone should be seeing right now a typical Excel screen. This is a short sample of an ADP payroll report a company asked me to work with. In column L, you'll notice there's a department. There's actually up to 60 or 70 different departments typically that they will work with. And they had to create a separate sheet tab and name every single department. They then needed to bring over from column E everybody's name associated with that department correctly. Then they needed to bring over 4 or 5 different columns of reimbursables from all of these numbers, different columns, and make sure that those are accurate. Then they needed subtotals and totals. And also, based on the position, I'm switching sheets, based on the position that the person held in the company, they applied what was called a burden rate to bill an additional percentage. They need that percentage based on their position, calculate that, and after all that, they needed subtotals and totals on the bottom, summary, and also GL code summary. It could take them up to 2 days to do that work, and I'm doing it in one keystroke. I just created all of the sheet tabs, I'm naming them, bringing over all the, it's done. So now if I click on any sheet tab, you'll see all the information is completed, all the formulas, the percentages, summaries, GL code summary on the bottom. Just a neat little thing that Excel can do.
And Norman, just to provide some context, because since you're doing this via a presentation, people don't really saw what you pressed and stuff like that. You pre-programmed a macro to do all this, and you basically pressed a button, and that's how it did it really, really fast. I mean, so I just wanted to show some context, because when people watch it over the webinar, sometimes we don't know how the heck that happened.
Okay, that's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Okay, now are you seeing a screen now with a bunch of names and addresses?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is another quick sample, and then we're going to get right into the training part of the presentation. This is a list of names and addresses. Did this for a condo management company. They needed to do a mail merge to make labels automatically in Microsoft Word, which I'm not showing today, but they cannot do the mail merge feature unless they have a proper data source, which means column C has to have a header for the titles. Column D would have to be the names. Column E would have to be the address. Column F, the city. Basically what they have to do, and what we all have to do, we need to manipulate data constantly in our day-to-day work. They would have to move everybody's title from column B to column C, everybody's name to column D, everybody's address to column E, etc. So again, with a little program that I wrote, I can do it all in one keystroke, and that's how we want to use the power of Excel. Now, just a quick little minute for the demonstration, then we're going to get into the training. I have here last name, comma, first name. Let's say the boss wants to have first and last name separate in column D. He needs them separated. I can insert a column without touching the mouse, grab all the information, and tell Excel. That took me literally 2 seconds. I split up the names. But the boss still isn't satisfied. He wants to have all of the names in pretty letters, proper case. So we can put in a simple formula and touch a key, and they're all proper case. These are some of the things that I will be teaching today, and hopefully maybe in some future presentations as well. So I'm going to close this out and open up the project that we were that was posted for you to look at.
And let me just reiterate, on the handout section, there is a Excel spreadsheet you can download, and it will be the exact same spreadsheet that he will be working on. So just download that spreadsheet if you want to follow along, or maybe watch the recording later on and try to practice on your own. So make sure you download that spreadsheet now that you're watching the webinar live.
Okay, so here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The first sheet in the sample that I posted is called navigation. We need to move around, and my position is every time my fingers leave the keyboard and reach for the mouse, I'm losing time by definition. So if I am in row 2, that's where my cell pointer is, and I want to skip all the data until I get to the first blank cell, which is generally the bottom of my list, watch carefully. I'm going to tap the key that says END on the keyboard. I'm kind of pointing to the picture of the keyboard here right now. When a standard keyboard is in the middle of the 6 keys above the arrows, tap the end key, the END, just tap it once, and then hit the down arrow key. I just went 350 rows in less than an instant. I can do end up, I can do end right, end down, end left, end up. It is the only fastest, easiest way to navigate a spreadsheet. End down, end up. Now, conversely, let's say something falls on your keyboard and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, where's my data? It's gone. No worry. If you want to skip all the blank cells until you see data again, simply tap the end key, END, and the up arrow or a left arrow, and it will take you to the first cell with data, hit end up again, and you're there. Now, you have noticed probably before, and perhaps have worked with this already, when you go down a few pages or even one page in the Excel spreadsheet, you lose your column headers. In row 1, I have date, amount, account type, etc. And it's very, very important to be able to see those all the time. There is a simple feature called freeze panes. It used to be called freeze titles years ago, which to me made more sense. And here is how the feature works. There's something you have to keep in mind that's very important. When you issue the freeze panes command, Excel will freeze everything above the cell pointer where you are and everything to the left. So if my cell pointer is in row 2, I will click on View from the menu on top, and then Freeze Panes, and once again, Freeze Panes. Excel will draw a line across all of the columns, and now as you hit page down or end down, you will always see your column headers. That is a very useful feature. It's pretty much almost every spreadsheet you're going to need that. I'm going to remove my keyboard for right now. Actually, I'm just going to move down here for a little bit. Doesn't want to move. Okay, I'll just delete it. Let's say that I have a lot more data and a lot of columns going off to the right. Typically, that can happen. You can have 15, 20, 30 columns. If I wanted to see the date and the amount columns, columns A and B, when I move all the way to the right of my screen, I'm going to use freeze panes in a slightly different way. I'm going to turn the freeze panes off, and I'm going to position my cell pointer in cell C2. Why? Because freeze panes will freeze everything above the cell pointer and everything to the left. So everything to the left of column C will be frozen. I'm just going to click on freeze panes. And now you can see Excel has drawn a line in both vertical and horizontally under row 1 and to the right of B. And now as I move over, my columns are locked as well as my rows going down. And that's just a very simple feature that's very useful called freeze panes. And I'm going to unfreeze them for now. Once we know that we can navigate a spreadsheet using the END, the end key and a down arrow and an up arrow, keep in mind that you do not want to have a lot of blank rows and columns. Actually, you shouldn't have any completely blank rows or columns in your spreadsheet because almost all the features, including the navigation tools, work only when the data is continuous. So you may have a few blank cells here and there, and that's fine. If you hit the end down key, it will skip all cells with data until it finds a blank. That's very important to remember. We're going to see a very cool trick shortly, how we're going to utilize that even more. The next thing we're going to do using the end down and end right concept is selecting data or highlighting data. They used to call it blocking, I think, years ago. And there's one key you need to remember, just one key, and that key is Shift. The Shift key on the keyboard, where you hold down capitalized letters, is the highlight key. It should also say highlight on that key as well. Hold down the Shift key, tap the end button and the down arrow, just as we did before, and you just highlight 350 rows. Shift and down, Shift and right. Let's do it again. I am in column A in row 2. If I want to highlight all of my data without having to use the mouse and going, oh, too far, nope, too far, it's very hard to control sometimes. All you need to do is hold down the Shift key on your keyboard, tap the End key once and the down arrow. While you're still holding the Shift key, tap the End key and the right arrow. And you can do this literally in less than a second and highlight all your data and avoid all the last time and sometimes aggravation of trying to get things with the mouse. So those are some navigation tools, how to freeze the titles on top called freeze panes, and how to select data. Next, what I'd like to share with you is a number of simple keyboard shortcuts that you can use every single day. Just as a quick history, we used to have menus in Microsoft Office. Every single menu had an underlined letter, and all we needed to do was activate the menu and touch the letters that were underlined to navigate. That was replaced back in around 2007 with the ribbons and the icons, but there are a number of the menu commands that are still available for us to use that are so much easier, and that's what I'm going to share with you right now. There's actually a menu command for everything. Some of them aren't as easy. I'm going to focus on some of the simpler ones right now. One of the things we want to do all the time is insert rows or columns. So I can just go and touch a key and I can insert them. And how do we do that? Well, there's a little secret. The secret is the keyboard button next to the space bar called ALT, the Alt key. The Alt key is the menu key. If you tap the ALT key one time, you will see that it activates the menu on top. I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to turn it on. There's an H under Home, N for Insert. Generally speaking, you can ignore those. The older commands are much easier to use and much more functional. So here's what we're going to do. Tap the Alt key one time. If you want to insert a row or a column, simply tap the letter I. If I want to insert a row vis-a-vis a column, I'm going to tap the letter R, and I have a new row. I'm going to undo that. Alt-IR. Again, Alt-IR. One more time, Alt-IR. In literally a blink, you can insert a row. If we use our Shift key and highlight 3 or 4 rows, Alt-IR will insert 3 or 4 rows. It's just that simple. Saves hours of time throughout the year. Of course, we can also insert a column the same way. Alt-IC for column. Anywhere you are, it'll insert the column to the left. Alt-IC inserts a column. Again, if I highlighted 2 columns, Alt-IC will insert 2 columns. If you've noticed, I've been undoing these steps as I go along, and the undo shortcut on the keyboard, so you don't have to reach for the mouse and click on the icon up on the top left here. The undo shortcut is Control with the letter Z for zebra. Control Z undoes the last action or actions that you have performed. So Alt-IR will insert a row. Alt-IC will insert a column. Let's say that you wanted to delete some rows. Tap Alt for the menu, then tap letter E for edit. Now remember, we're using the old commands here, which I find a lot simpler and less confusing than the ribbon-based commands. Tap Alt for the menu, E for edit, D for delete, and now look where we are. We're in our comfort zone. We have the normal dialog box we see for deleting a row or a column, and I just chose to delete a row. So you do Alt-E-D-R, and again, in less than a second, we can get where we want to go. One more shortcut along the same lines that I'll give you is inserting a worksheet. Sometimes you need an extra sheet. You do not need to reach for the mouse. Tap the Alt key on the keyboard. That's the Alt key next to the space bar. I for insert and W for worksheet. And you'll notice that we now have on the bottom sheet 1, which I just deleted. So it's Alt-I W for worksheet. And if you want one more to throw in the mix, to delete it, it's Alt for the menu, E for edit, those are the old commands, and L for delete. and that will delete a worksheet. Just as a word of caution, it doesn't ask you sometimes if you want to delete it, but it just deleted it. I believe there was data there that would give you an option saying this cannot be undone, because you cannot undo a worksheet deletion. So there we have some navigation tools, freeze panes, how to select data, and some shortcuts that are easy to work with. Moving right along.
Quick question,
In this,
Norman. Um,
yes,
so the the new alt commands are easy to follow because you have press alt and then you follow the letters that are on the screen. But is there like a database or somewhere that people can go to see the old alt commands? Or do you recommend anything for that?
actually, there are probably places that have them. I'm not familiar with one off the top of my head. However, for any of the members of your webinar that want to send me an email, I'll be glad to shoot over my own personal cheat sheet, which has a ton of these commands, including how to do paste special values and how to go to places and how to do special commands just using the keyboard.
Okay, I'll put your email on the chat box.
Okay. All right, now in this spreadsheet, this is a typical spreadsheet. I have date, amount, account type, etc. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to apply a formula to add 10% to the value in column B. So I'm simply going to do equals B2, and I'm going to multiply it by 1.1, and now it's 10% higher. I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rows, and I want to copy the formula. A lot of times, people will typically click and drag the formula down. But again, once you start dragging with the mouse, you drop it sometimes, it gets mixed up sometimes, it's hard to control. What we can do is instead of that, we can do equals B2 times 1.1. There's a neat little shortcut. If you want to copy a formula all the way down, we know that in column F, there's something in there all the way down. That's where the data ends. If you point the mouse pointer to the bottom right corner of the cell with the formula that you have, in the bottom right corner, the mouse pointer will change to a black plus sign, not a white one, but a black one. Instead of clicking and dragging, you can double click it, and a double click will automatically put the formula. Very neat trick, and you can use it all the time. There is a time, though, and a place when you cannot use this particular trick, and I'm going to illustrate that right now. I just did a shift and down and hit delete. See how fast that works? We're going to use this all the time. Let's say that I have an extra column for some reason that somebody needs that's blank and you can't get rid of it, whatever the situation might be. So column G is blank, and in column H, I have a formula, and I want to copy it down for all the number of rows. When I double click it, as I just did, nothing happens, because the way Excel was designed, the double click copy shortcut that we just did only works if it's right immediately next to some data in a column right next to it. So what do I do now? I don't want to have to copy and do shift and down and down and down, because it could be thousands of rows. That's not going to help me. So we're going to use the navigation tools we just used and learned about and apply a very, very nifty little trick. I know that column F has an end where the end of my data is. Maybe it's in column B. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to do end down. What does end down do? It skips all cells with data until it sees a blank. That was the important key I mentioned earlier. It skips all cells with data until it sees a blank. Now, if I move over to column H, which is where I want my formula, I'm going to put a space or a letter. It doesn't matter. What that accomplishes is it creates a stopping point. If I do end up, Excel will jump and skip all the cells that were blank until it saw data, which happens to be my formula. If I do Control C for copy, if I do now Shift end down, I can get my formula pasted in 1 second. If I do not have a stopping point, if there's nothing in column H to stop it, it's going to go to row 1,000,000. So let's do this procedure again. If I wanted to move to the end of a list, I would do end down, end with the down arrow. But if there's nothing between my formula and the bottom, it's going to automatically cell jump to row 1 million or 65,000 in previous versions. I can do end up and go back to my data. So all I'm doing is creating my own stopping point. I move to column F, go down to the bottom, move back to H, put a space or any character and hit end up. Now I've created a stopping point. I can copy my formula with Control C, then do Shift and down and hit enter. I've got all my formulas, and you can do this literally, I would say, in 1 second. You just go down here, move over, put your space, copy, paste, and you're done. Let's do this one more time, a little bit slowly. I have in column H a formula which takes the value in column B, $340, and multiplies it by 1.1. Great. I need to copy that formula down all the way. In this example, column G is completely blank. So double-clicking the bottom right corner shortcut for copying a formula will not work. I don't want to click and drag because it's very hard to control sometimes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the bottom of column F by using N down. It skips all the cells with data until it sees a blank. I'm going to go to column H, which is where I want my formula, and put a space or any letter. That creates a stopping point. If you do N down, it's going to stop there. Now I just jump back up to my formula, Control C to copy it, Shift N down, and again, in basically 1 second, we have our formula copied. Okay, moving right along. The next sheet is labeled TTC, which stands for text to columns, which is a wonderful feature for people to use, and I'll show you a few practical examples. In column A, we have names. And these names, by the way, you might recognize these if you've done some sample into test files in QuickBooks, because that's where I get a lot of my sample data from. So if it looks familiar, that's why. We have first and last name, but I need to split up the first and last name into a separate column. They must be separated. You might be sending the file to another location. The other program might not incorporate data unless it's separate. There could be a lot of reasons. Instead of having to cut and paste maybe a few thousand times, we're going to use a feature to do it almost instantly. So first of all, let's move to column B and insert a column, Alt-IC. See how useful these shortcuts can come in. Insert a column so we have a place to put our last name. Now, I want to highlight all my names in column A. Shift and down. Shift is highlight, the end, END key, and the down arrow. Shift and down, fastest, easiest way to navigate and select text. With your mouse, click on the data menu on top. Go down a little bit and to the right until you see the icon called text to columns. That is the feature that's exactly what we want to do. We want to split up text into different columns. We're going to click on that. You'll see that there are two ways of splitting text into columns, delimited and fixed width. Fixed width would be great if all the names had the same number of letters with the same width. You could draw a line in between them at an interval. Forget it. That almost never happens in the real world. It's very rarely used. Not for this purpose anyway. Delimited means there's a character common to every cell in your data that you can focus on. So we're going to have delimited chosen and choose next. The delimiters, tab just ignore, it doesn't mean anything to us. Semicolon, which one of these characters is common to every single name in our list? A space. Every name has a space. Activate that checkbox, click finish, bam. Just like that, you have all your names split up. I'm going to undo that with Control letter Z. So let's start again. I'm going to delete this column. We have a list of names. You need to split them up. And we'll see momentarily you can split up many other things as well. Alt-IC, we're going to insert a column. Shift and down, we're going to grab all the names. We're going to click on data from the menu on top. Go down and to the right till we get to text to columns. Delimited is our choice. That's a character that we can focus on common to each cell. And click on next. Space is the character that's common to every single name, and you click finish and bam, you've got your information separate. As I mentioned, we can do this with other situations as well. The next sheet tab is called commas. Again, in column A, I have a list of names. In this case, it's last name, comma, and a first name. Let's split them up. Alt-I-C, Alt for the menu, I for insert, C for column. Shift and down, grab all of my names. I could have 30,000 names. I get them instantly. Once again, from the data menu, I choose the option for text to columns, that feature, delimited, and click next. However, instead of a space, which I'm going to uncheck, what is the delimiter common to each one of my cells? In this case, it is a comma. Choose comma, click finish, and again, you have split up your data. One more example where you can find this very useful. I have a list of descriptions for products, a reference number, and a quantity in column C and column D. AEB 26-27B, I need to compare this list of parts in column C to another list. Maybe I'm merging with another company and I want to compare our product list, anything. However, the other company doesn't have the suffix. They only have the first part of the code, nothing with a dash and a suffix. I need to separate them so I can compare the data. How do I do it? I insert a column and shift and down, grab all my information just that easily. And once again, from the data menu, I'm going to go down and to the right to text to columns. Delimited again is my choice. I choose next. I don't have a comma, I don't have a space, but I do have an other character. Click in the other checkbox and you can put in the dash, the hyphen. You can already see in the data preview on the bottom what it's going to do. We're going to click on finish, presto. I've now separated my list. So literally in a matter of seconds, we could accomplish what people might be doing in hours of time just using a simple feature called text to columns.
Norman, real quick, it's important to explain. You didn't explain it. Why is it that you're inserting a column before doing a text to columns function? Why is it so important?
I mentioned that in the first example when we had first and last name. We need a blank column to have a place for the last name to go.
Because otherwise it would overwrite the data. That's an important piece, right? It would overwrite the data that's
right. And Excel will warn you about that. It'll say there's already data there. Okay. So if there's no blank column, then we're going to insert a column to make sure there's a place for it. If you already have a blank column, it wouldn't be necessary. Either way, Excel will warn you that there is data there.
Okay.
But thank you for the extra.
We're in a halfway point, so let me run a quick polling question. How's the pace so far? Kind of give you some instant feedback on the pace, whether it's slow or fast, and that will kind of let you know. And there was I did put your email on the chat box if somebody wanted to email you to get that list of shortcuts that you discussed. On that text to column work, if you have two delimiters, that was the question. If you have two delimiters, let's say you have two hyphens or a space and a hyphen or a space and a slash, does that delimiter box allow you to put more than one character, or it's just one character?
You can only use one character. However, you can do two text to column functions one after the other.
Okay.
But text to columns is limited to one character.
That's good clarification. Okay, I'm going to let go of the polling question now. And 91% said it was just fine. 3% too slow, go a little faster.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The next feature is called text formulas, and there's a sheet tab on the bottom if you're following along. In column F, I have state and zip code. And they are together. Now, what if you needed to split the state and the zip code? Well, that's easy. We can do text to columns. We can highlight them and choose data, then text to columns, delimited and choose next. And then we start thinking, I got a problem here. There's no characters. There's no delimiter, no space, no comma, nothing, and they're certainly not the same width. And quite simply, you can't do it. You cannot split up a state from a zip code. Not with text to columns. Of course we can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have shown you. Okay, so how are we going to split up data when we cannot use text to columns? For this, we're going to use a very cool formula called the text formula. And here's how it works. Equals, and we're going to use RIGHT, equals right, open parentheses, the same syntax as any other formula in Excel with a function, equals right. This means give me the rightmost characters of cell F2. Comma means how many. How many characters from the right of cell F2 do I want? I want 5, close parentheses. So this formula tells Excel to give me the rightmost characters of the cell to the left, which is F2. Comma means how many. 5 is the number of characters I want. I've got the zip code. I'm going to double click. I am done. I can go home. Hector, can I go home now?
You can, but one thing I'll ask you, Norman, that number, notice that is formatted to the left. So that's actually a text extraction, and that's not recognized as a numerical number, correct? I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Actually, it is a number, but it just so happens that it formats that way, probably because column F was formatted that way.
Okay, so it's just got text formatting, but it's still recognized as a number.
Yes, definitely. Okay. And that's a whole different section working with text and formatting for a different day. Sure. So let's do this feature again. I need to separate data. It is critical. I always need to do it. I cannot use text to columns to split up the state and the zip code because there's no delimiter. There's not the same width. So I use equals right. F2, comma means how many, 5. I want 5 characters. I've got my zip code separated, double click it, and they're all done. Now, if I wanted to get the state separated from the zip code, of course, I can do that just as easily. I can use equals left. Equals left, open parentheses, again, F2, comma, and how many characters I want? I only want 2. 2 characters from the left of that cell will give me the state, and now I can double click it, and I've got all my states separate. And if I wanted to paste special values, because these are formulas and not values, I can select them, I can copy them and turn into values just by touching a few keys, which I just did, and that'll be for another time, or you might get my cheat sheet and you can see the shortcut for that one.
And Norman, there is a comment here that on this particular case, there's a 2-letter state. So in this particular case, there is technically a fixed width. The example you're saying is when there isn't a fixed width, but there is a fixed width in this particular case. There happens to be a fixed width, but
except for one thing, I specifically set this up with some capital letters and different size letters, so that it will throw off the width a little bit.
Right, at least from a visual perspective or from a character perspective.
Right, so you couldn't use fixed width for text to columns in this case.
Oh, you can in this case.
Data, text to columns.
Yeah.
Fixed width.
Yeah, and then next. And then just select the first 2 characters.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard though sometimes if the characters are different font.
Yeah, I think you're explaining visually, like you're saying in the cases where visually it's not obvious that it's a 2-character.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again for the input.
Yeah.
There are going to be times, though, where there is no fixed width. Again, the font size might be a little bit different and it won't line up perfectly. And you're going to find that equals right and equals left will do the trick for you. Okay, the next feature is going to be a little bit more complicated. And it's going to be another text formula, which is a step level up. And it was specifically requested, so here we go. This is called mid and find. I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger, and we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so before the questions, or 15 minutes, on this one formula. It's actually a combination formula. In column C, you have a list of stuff. Doesn't matter what it is. And you'll notice that in a lot of the descriptions for these products, there is a slash and then the words in lab and another product number. However, I don't want to just separate everything after in lab, which I could do using text to columns and using the slash as a delimiter. I could easily break out everything past the slash. But I want to break out more specific information. I'm just using this as an example, and you can have many of your own. And here's what we're going to do. The first thing we have to know, I'm just going to move over to the right a little bit to give us a blank space. We have to know a couple of basic formulas, and then we're going to put them together. I've got a few names here. I'll make that a little bit bigger so we can see it all the same. That looks better. If you wanted to get some data, text, within a cell, you can do that with a formula called equals mid. Equals mid, open parentheses. This will allow you to extract text information from anywhere within a cell. So we use equals mid, open parentheses. From which text do we want to extract information? In this case, L7, comma. At what point do I want to start extracting data? I want to get characters that begin after the 8th character of that cell. You'll see visually in a moment how this is going to work. And I'm going to hit comma, and the number of characters I'm going to put is 1. What this is going to do is extract from cell L7, starting in the 8th position, whatever character is there, and that is the capital letter A. If we look at Norman Axelman and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 space, the 8th character is the letter A. So we can use equals mid to determine and break out, extract a character from within a cell. I need to know the 8th character from each of these cells. Well, there they are. That's pretty cool, but not all that useful. But you could determine the character based on a number of position. Keep that in mind. You might want to use that one day, but we're going to take it up another level. There's another formula called equals find. We need to use the equals find formula for the following reason. The first formula we just learned was equals mid. Extract data from the middle, so to speak, somewhere within column L7 at the 8th character. But sometimes you don't know what number character you want to start from. You just know you want to start from a certain place. How do I know where to start from? I'm going to use equals find. What do I want to find? In this case, let's say I wanted to find the letter A. When you are referring to text, any text within a formula in Excel, it must be surrounded by quotation marks. I want to find the letter A, comma, in cell L7, and I don't need a start number. That's not important to me right now. And oh my gosh, that is so cool. The equals find formula will tell you the number position within a cell where a character is. Now, let's go back and utilize this in our formula as such. In column D, I am going to type a formula of equals mid. I want to extract certain text from cell C5. Now, what text do I want to find? I want to find everything after the slash, or one character after the slash, whatever I determine. So equals mid C5 will say extract data from that cell C5. But from what point? The slash could be in the 10th character place, the 15th, the 3rd. So I use find, which will return the number of character spaces over where the first slash occurs in the cell. Then I can use that within the mid formula, and here's how it works. Equals mid C5. What data do I want to extract from C5? from the position number, find the slash in C5. That's its own formula with its own little red parentheses surrounding it. Find the slash, whatever position number that is, and equals mid will then find the data starting at that position where the slash is. And if you add 1 to it, because you have to take into account the space, you're going to get in lab LTA3. And if you copy the formula down, it will give you all of the data that you want. Now, you could actually accomplish this in this case by using text to columns and break out everything after the slash. But what if you wanted only the final characters after the in lab? So we can actually tell Excel to find the characters in lab. Again, they must be in quotation marks because they're text. If you use the formula for find in lab, I'm actually going to open up a column so we can see it a little more clearly. I'll make this a little bit wider. Equals find in lab. It is text, it is case sensitive in this formula. Find in lab within text C5. It tells me it's in the 28th position. And here it's in the 25th position. And in this example down on row 14, it's in the, row 15 actually, 29th position. So I can find where in lab is. So what do I do in column E now? I tell it Excel to break out extract data from C5. And where do I want to start from? I want to start from wherever in lab occurs, and the find formula will return that number within cell C5. And then I'm going to add 6 characters. Why 6 characters? Because in lab is 5 characters plus a space. Comma 50, before we skipped it, now we're going to use it. The number of characters, that's how many characters after the point at which you start extracting the data, how many characters you want. You can specify a number or just put 100 and get everything. So this formula will break out only the LTA3 or the HTB1. So basically, you can use formulas in Excel to get anything you want when in situations certain features will not work. So just to review this one more time, equals mid is allowing us to extract data from within a cell. Equals mid C5 takes something out of cell C5. Well, what do I want to extract from cell C5? I want to extract the characters after in lab. You can't use text to columns, I don't believe here, because the words in lab are in all different places. It's not just a slash, it's not a character. So we're going to tell Excel to use the find feature to find, quote, in lab. That will return the number position where it is in the cell. It could be the 10th position, the 3rd, the 29th, whatever. Equals mid C5, look in that cell, and then take from the certain number position where in lab occurs, which find will return for us, and then give me the value of everything at that point. However, I don't want the words in lab, so I say +6, which gives me the 5 characters from in lab plus a space, and I break out the data that I want. I believe we're going to need the next number of minutes for questions, Hector, so I could cut this off now, or depending on what you all decide, I could go on to one more feature. Just let me know, and I could either entertain questions or show another feature.
You could do one more. You could do one more.
Great. This is one of my favorites. Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to your seats. This is the amazing, absolutely amazing pivot table. I'm going to do it a little bit quickly because I want to have a few minutes for questions. Here we go. In this sheet called pivot, we have standard data. I have date in column A, amount in column B, account types, banking information, whatever. Under the account type, I have CDs, savings, checking, IRA accounts. I could have 30 or 40 different types. What you need to know is the total dollar amount for each type of account. Well, you could sort them or filter them and then add them up, but it would take a few minutes. There is a feature we used to use years ago called subtotals, but then you have to sort your data specifically, and then with subtotals, forget it, it's all passé, obsolete. Pivot tables is the way to go, and here's how it works. I am going to click on Insert from the menu on top, and then Pivot Table. Since I have space in my worksheet, it's mostly blank, I'm going to click in my existing worksheet and choose column cell I3. I3. You will see a box called a pivot table here, but most people have difficulty using this one. Microsoft changed it from the classic view, and you want to right-click your pivot table and go to Pivot Table Options. From the Display tab, choose Classic Pivot Table Layout. Much easier to work with. This is what you want to be working with most of the time. Now, once I insert a pivot table, you notice on the right-hand side, Excel Pivot Table feature has shown me all my account or my title headers, my column headers. I'm going to take the account type that I want and drag and drop it where it says row fields. Whoa, that's pretty cool. Then I'm going to simply take my amounts and click and drag them into the middle, and instantly I have all of my amounts totaled. I just formatted them for currency for every single account type. There is nothing greater than this I've ever experienced. Oh, this is just too much. Oh, it gets much better. Let me repeat these steps. We're going to switch to the classic view, which we just did before. I'm going to click and drag my account types under row fields and my amounts in values, and that's the whole feature. It's done. Now, there's one more thing I want to show you, and that is the somewhat more advanced, powerful features of or aspects of pivot tables. Let's say that you wanted to know also which branch from column E opened up which type of accounts and how much belongs in them. You can click and drag branch and drop it next to total. And now you have an amazing, amazing report in 1 second. And you could also actually take branch and drop it down here and get another view. That is the magic of pivot tables. One more time real quickly, and then I'll take some questions. So you're going to insert a pivot table. Doesn't matter where you are in your data. As long as you don't have a lot of blank columns and rows in between, you're fine. Actually, no blank columns or rows. You can choose existing worksheet or another one. Choose any location that's comfortable. Right-click to get pivot table options and change the display to classic because it's much easier to work with. Excel already shows you your column headers. I want account type, and I drop it in the row fields. I want my amounts, and I'm going to drop them in the middle, and I am done. I hope you enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen, and hope to hear from all of you at some other time. And Hector, any questions now?
Oh, hey, yeah, thank you. Let me put my screen back as presenter. Yeah, there was some questions. Someone saying it looks like I've been trying to do pivot tables with the wrong data, but with left, right, and mid, I should be able to set up the right categories to do pivots. Okay, that was more of a comment. Yeah, that makes total sense, and that's an important lesson. Power QuickBooks users understand that. Excel users understand that the purpose of Excel is not necessarily doing data entry. The purpose of Excel is typically producing a report of some sort. So those techniques such as text to columns, left and right, they usually are done before producing a report like a pivot table. So that was actually a pretty interesting one. Somebody says, what is the shortcut again to create the new worksheet?
Alt is the menu key, ALT. That turns on the old menu commands. Actually, turns on the menu in general, but you have access to the old commands. Alt, the letter I for insert, W for worksheet.
Okay, and somebody says, is there a correct way to move or delete a pivot table? Cheryl's asking that. I'm not sure if I understand the question, but maybe you do, Norman. Is there a...
The way I always delete a pivot table is simply highlighting the columns where it's occupying, and I can simply delete those columns. I don't think there's actually an X on a pivot table that'll delete it.
Okay, so there's no,
And
yes,
if you use slicers, you have to actually delete the box, not just the X.
so like you right click and delete type of thing. Okay, let me run the last polling question and then talk about the next webinar we have. There's no more questions, Norman, and there's a lot of great comments here about what they like. So real quick, did you learn something new? Just wanted to do a quick survey on that. So did you learn something new? Still got like 40 people logged in, although it's already top of the hour. So we'll get a good sample of that, Norman, for you, so you get an idea how it was. And thank you very much for doing the entire presentation.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you for the opportunity.
I love being able
Glad
to
to
catch up
share.
on my email and stuff while somebody else is presenting. Okay, so here's the results. So yeah, so 53%, almost everything was new, and 47% learned something new, but they were familiar with most of it. No one knew the entire content already, which is good. That means it was worth your while. So again, Norman, your email and your phone numbers on the screen. You normally take phone calls to hear about projects, and in some cases, give quick answers. In other cases, you offer to do maybe private consulting, and then there's an email as well if you want to send him something. And you're saying that if they email you, you can send them your shortcuts, correct?
Right, I have a cheat sheet actually I've developed for other presentations which have a lot of the menu commands,
Perfect.
and I can share that with anyone who sends me an email.
Perfect. So the next Excel Power Hour will be next month, June, the first Monday. We don't have a specific topic yet, so we're just going to still call it Advanced Excel Tips and Tricks. Other webinars that I'm involved with this month in May, on Thursday, not tomorrow, but the next Thursday, we're going to have QB Power Hour. Check it out, qbpowerhour.com to register. 12 p.m. Eastern on May 11th, and we will be about practice management in QuickBooks. And then on the 17th, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, we'll be doing QuickBooks Enterprise tips and tricks. And then on the same 17th, on Wednesday at 4 p.m., I'll be doing a deep dive on social media platforms as a marketing tool. This is nothing to do with Excel accounting. This is actually a marketing and growth webinar. So to register, go to sbpowerhour.com, and then Tax Power Hour, which is also monthly, the same first Wednesday of every month. We had it a couple hours ago, and the next episode will be June 7th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Anyway, stay connected. Check out the website, which is under construction, but search Facebook for Excel Power Hour. Continue the conversation there. Share your experience, ask your questions, and email me or Norman if you have any other questions. Thank you very much, and you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks, Norman.
Thank you. Bye now.